Well, good day to you. It is May the 19th, and I hope you are in a great day wherever you happen to be. Now, just as Mike Myers said in the movie Austin Powers, allow myself to introduce myself. My name is Gary Willing, but what do we talk about here? We talk about the emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Now, we also talk about why is the teacher coming back now, along with his tiny group of enlightened men called the Masters of Wisdom, after really being away from the public eye for eons, totally forgotten about by the vast, vast majority of humanity. Why are they coming back now? Why is it important that they're coming back at this time? And of course, what does it mean for all of us that they are doing this? Now, based on what I just said, with the exception of the Austin Powers movie quote, you might react any which way, okay? But I want to try to put your mind at ease about something. I am not the slightest bit interested in changing your religious belief or your spiritual view on anything, really. I'm presenting this information for you to consider for yourself to see if it's true for yourself or not, okay? Now, it is my hope that you take it a step further. You look at the links in the description of these videos, do your own research on it, and then after doing that, if you see that there's some truth to it, that's wonderful. If then you start to do something about it and help SOP save our planet, well, then I would just be absolutely ecstatic if that were true. But even after you do your own research, if you see that there is no truth to any of this, and you go on with your life after that, well, then rest assured that from my perspective, I would respect you immensely because you had a little bit of an open mind, and an open mind enough to perhaps, and even just investigate it for yourself. You know, most people just reject this information outright. And to be honest, I'm kind of in that last category. When I first heard this information, I rejected it outright. Now, I didn't make great strides against the author of this information, Benjamin Creme. When I read it, I just didn't believe it. And then I put the book aside and I forgot about it for a while, and then I picked it back up. I read a little bit of it and then put it aside, and then I started doing my own investigation on it, really. Now, granted, this was before the internet, so I had to the information came a lot slower than it would perhaps for you at this day and time, but I started to read it. It started to make a little bit more sense. I started to look at it from a different angle. I started to become more interested in it. But the thing that I noticed really first and after this, after I started becoming mildly interested in this information, was I started to open up to the problems that Maitreya has been saying are facing humanity on a daily basis, such as the injustice of the hunger and poverty of the world, the environment. You know, I knew those were going on, but I was able to turn a blind eye to it. After hearing this information, and it started to kind of make more sense to me, I could not turn a blind eye to that anymore. Now, it doesn't mean that I necessarily just went all out right and I became a Mother Teresa and doing everything I can, living moment to moment to solve it, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. You know, and I wanted to do something, whether it was a lot or a little, to help solve that problem. So I started to notice that this information was changing me, changing my view on the world, changing my view on the problems of the world and so forth, right? Which, if you do investigate this information, even if you don't believe it to be true, can't help but do that because the problems are real, you know. The problems are going to take every one of us to do something to try to solve the problem, really. Now, as I started to investigate this information, I also started to have experiences with Maitreya, who I believe is the one awaited by all the world's religions. And those experiences became so extraordinary that even though intellectually at the time I was denying it, I was having this heartfelt response to it, like, this is strange. You know, and if you're interested in hearing my experiences, maybe not, I have a playlist of them organized. I talk about them from time to time in the video, but at least you can kind of hear a video or two about some of the experiences that I had. Because I'm not the only one that's having these experiences. I'm not claiming to be the only one. You know, I know personally hundreds of people who have had experiences with Maitreya. They're not as open about it as I am, perhaps, but they have had them, and I've heard their stories, and their stories are quite inspiring when I hear them. So you might have even had experiences with Maitreya and not even realized it. You might have considered it to be an angel that came to you, because that's one of the many miracles that people have experienced, are the angel sightings, being saved by accidents by angels. In each and every case that these people have had authentic angelic experiences, it's been one or other of these masters that have come to them and helped them out, saved them from an accident, comforted them when they were sick or something like that, or healed them even, gave them a insight about their life and their problem that they were facing at that time, that an ordinary person wouldn't have had that same kind of wisdom and insight on them, or even concern, and to have it all be about them and not have an agenda about it. And if you have had an experience with these masters, you know what I'm talking about by saying that. But then as I started to look at this, I started to see that there were miracles happening, just as Benjamin Creme had been talking about, to each and every one of these religious groups. And they were pointing to the fact that we were one, because they were giving hope to people of every religious faith and those of no particular religious faith. And like I say in every video, if that's the case, and it is the case, and when you look at this, you'll see that these miracles have been going on, whether you think they're miracles or not, something's been going on, right? And they're leaving people with a sense of hope. So therefore, the hope for mankind is for all of mankind, And then the other thing, like I said, and if you dive into this information, you'll see this, you'll have the same experiences, I can guarantee you. And for that, I am deeply apologetic, because ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise, as they say, right? Or as they say in the Bible, in the kingdom of the blind, the man with the one eye is king. Well, just because you can see with one eye doesn't mean you're going to like what you see, right? Is my view of that statement in the Bible. When you open it just one eye to the problems of the world and have a heartfelt response to those problems, you can never go back. You might not do anything about it, you might ignore it, but you can never go back to being totally ignorant of it. Your life will be totally different from that moment on. And Maitreya being on TV is not to try to change your beliefs, it's to do just that. Open your heart to the problems of the world. So therefore, you can't deny that the problems are there anymore. And then hopefully you'll eventually do something, whether it's a little bit or a lot. Because the problems are going to take each and every one of us doing something about the problems to solve the problems. Now, Maitreya being on TV is going to also shine a huge spotlight on the fact that if we do not solve the problems like the environment, like poverty, like war, then our very survival, all of us, will be in jeopardy. So if you don't believe in the fact that we are spiritually one, you can't help but deny, based on the problems that are facing all of us, that are affecting each and every one of us, that there's an interconnectedness between all of us that is proof, because we have to solve these problems together, that these problems are affecting each and every one of us. So, you see what I'm saying? So that's my hope and intention, not changing your beliefs, but to help you, just as I did when I saw this, get you started in getting this information going to where you'll start to see the problems of the world and do something about it, really. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease about that, okay? Now, I do have some questions. I always encourage questions. After doing your own research on this, and looking at it, if you can't answer a question yourself, you can post your question as a comment and I'll try to answer it. It is important to also understand my intention of the question and answer. And I use this as a disclaimer, but it's true. I'm not presenting myself as an authority on this information. I'm not presenting myself getting my answers from a higher source and therefore you should take it as fact or truth, right? Or believe it just because I said it. I'm not saying that you would, but you know what I'm saying? Or even give you the correct answer and then that's it. It's really about inquiry. It's about us discovering more of the truth of this information for ourselves. And when people ask questions and I try to answer it, I actually have that experience. I learn more about this. I see more of the truth of this information. It becomes more real for me even. It makes me want to do more videos, want to let more people know about this information and not just ignore it. You know what I mean? But it's also opening my eyes too, more and more and more to the problems of the world by the questions that people ask. So ask it if you want. You know what I mean? I'll do my best to answer it. And hopefully hopefully those who are hearing these questions and the answers to these questions it will bring a greater sense of understanding of this information. So that's my intention. So let's get on into the questions before I go too long in this video, because if you're like me, today I have places to go and people to see. So I'm sure you do as well. Now, the first comment, and I like comments too, especially if they're on point to what we talk about and can add to the discussion. But this one comes from my friend from the Middle East. He says, regarding the title of the video, and the title of the video he's referring to is Maitreya video 51321, Are We Headed for an Economic Crash? That's the title of the video he's commenting about. Regarding the title of the video, this is very positive. Wow. You know what? Actually, I agree with you, but most people would disagree. So you must not have a lot of money in the stock market or care about your money. Because the economic collapse means that Maitreya will come soon on the day of declaration. That is definitely true. To present his plan for the new united global economy, which is also true in a way. Now, I do want to touch on a few things that you talked about because I think you're bringing up a good point. But let me just kind of add to it a little bit, if you don't mind, sir. Maitreya's return is not contingent on an economic crash, for one. Okay? The economic collapse that's going on, that has been going on, that is coming to a climactic point, in my opinion, is a direct result of man's misuse of his free will. And it's our karma, or cause and effect. The cause was we built a structure that does not suit the needs of every person on this planet. It suits the needs of the very few at the expense of the very many. It is a system that allows and is even accepted and supported by those who aren't these small groups of people who have enough money to live for 1,000 lifetimes and never go through all the money that they have. Even if they never made another dime, they could go thousands of lifetimes without spending all their money. And then you have other people who live on less than $1 a day and who are starving to death, who have no voice. Nobody cares about. The media doesn't even talk about it. I can't imagine the kind of pain that starvation would cause, but yet to suffer in a world with no voice, with no way of even my suffering being heard, from and being helped by other people, right? I couldn't imagine dying in that way. It would, oh my gosh, or having somebody close to me die that way, like a mother or a father or a child even, right? Can you imagine? That's the injustice that we're living in today. And the other part of it is there's plenty of food and there's ways to get it over there to them. It's not like we can't ship it over the mountain to give it to them. We just don't care enough to do it, right? So that's the system that's in place right now. That's why it's crumbling, because it can't go on much longer because it's not fulfilling the needs of every single one of us. That's the new economy that he's talking about in his own way. Is Maitreya is going to show us that sharing is the only way to create justice, the only way to create peace, which is the only way that's going to give us a future. The mantra that Maitreya said decades ago, without sharing there could be no justice. Without justice there could be no peace. Without peace there could be no future. There's no end to that. That is going to be the mode of living on this planet for the rest of time. Because that's the way that we should have always been living all along. Natural. That's the natural way of us living. Is giving of the resources that the world has given all of us, really, so that all of us can live. Now, I talk about this because this is also an important part of it in reference to the political divisions that are going on. So just hear me out, and then we'll get on to the next question. Is in the United States, like I'm sure it is in other parts of the world, okay, but I'm much more knowledgeable about the political situation in the United States than I am in perhaps what's going on in Nigeria, right? but I'm sure if it's happening there, it's happening here. You have, in this country, the right-wing conservative party of the Republican Party, and those people who follow that ideology, who are fighting for, in their own way, freedom. Now, I'm not saying they got it 100% right, but they are fighting for their freedom, which is a divine ideal. It's a divine truth, freedom, right? Right now, it's just an ideal, is what I mean. But there's a divine truth to freedom. Just as on the left, the Democrat progressive type of thinker is fighting for, marching for, tooth and nail, more equality and justice, which is still just an ideal right now, but there is a divine truth to justice, of course. Now Maitreya will tell you that freedom and justice are one and the same. You can't have true freedom without true justice. And you can't have true justice when there's injustice in the world. So it has to be for everyone. It doesn't stop. It can't just stop at a nation and then there's true justice for just the United States and not for, let's say, Vietnam, right? It's got to be everywhere. You can't have freedom in the United States, true freedom, and people who are shackled in slavery and injustice in Saudi Arabia, you know what I mean? Or vice versa, you know what I mean? Now, in the United States, the freedom that they are fighting for is, I think, incorrect. They're fighting for less regulation on business. Let's say the Second Amendment gun rights, that's freedom to them. And in the minds of an American, true freedom to them, which isn't really true freedom, is the ability to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, say perhaps, think perhaps, worship perhaps, whatever you want, whenever you want, to say and do whatever you want to another person without anything really coming back to you. To create a business that can rape the environment without any government oversight and all. That's true freedom to them, which isn't really freedom. It's something else. And then you have the left who are fighting for equality and are using coin phrases like political correctness and stuff, which isn't true justice either. True justice is only going to come out of the principle of sharing, which the Democratic Party and Progressive Party isn't really talking about the principle of sharing in the way that was done, like with the Marshall Plan, for instance, right? So, true freedom, and I'm paraphrasing this, really is each and every one of us experiencing our own divinity in our own way and being able to do that. Having the time to have this leisure to where we can discover that for ourselves. And therefore, really tap into the innate creativity which is within all of us. To be able to allow other people to have that same type of freedom to be that divine, person that they truly are in all its manifestation, but not to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, to whomever you want, without any kind of, anything coming back to you. You know what I mean? That's not true freedom. But true freedom is, and then when you look at it, Maitreya even says, where no 2 days are alike, where we don't fear one another. So when Maitreya says, without sharing, there could be no justice, without justice, there could be no peace, and listen to this, without peace, there could be no future, it's not a future of more and the same. It's a future where we're living truer to who we are as souls. One family, without fear of one another, without distrust from one another, without hating one another, without trying to exploit one another. That is true freedom. And that's the freedom that the teacher is going to inspire and galvanize within us. But it starts with the principle of sharing. You can't have one without the other. See what I'm saying? So that's where the global economy fits into all that. So hopefully that answers that question. Now, real quick, I do want to talk about it because the same person, there was a discussion about something. Somebody wrote, Zen, who comments quite a bit, says, great to hear from you again, because it was a little over a week since the last video I put up. And my work schedule just got so hectic I couldn't put a video up. So that's the reason why it took me so long. But anyway, I love putting these videos up. So believe me, I miss it more than you do, right? But he wrote, we will not stop hearing his voice until Maitreya comes on the day of declaration. So I don't know if that was a compliment or an insult. But yeah, you're not going to stop hearing about hearing from me until the day of declaration. And then after that, I don't know, I won't need to talk about it in this way. That's for sure. But I want to say this, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up, okay? Because this kind of goes along with what I said about my intention of putting these videos up. You don't need to come back. I'm not putting these videos up to create a following so you keep coming back and pressing the like and subscribe button and all that kind of stuff. It's really, listen to a video, maybe 2-ish, maybe 3-ish. Do your own investigation, do something with it or not. I mean, that's really, and if you want to come back, that's up to you. If not, I wish you much peace and success and love in your life, you know what I mean? But even if you don't agree with what I have to say. So it really is not important to keep hearing my voice, you know what I mean? I'm sure it's quite boring to some of you. All righty. The next question is very similar to the last question I'm going to read, but I'm going to try to answer them both. This one comes from Ashira E11E, who I have never heard from before, so it's welcome. I thank you for taking the time to ask questions on this. I agree, and what they're agreeing to is the title of the video I put up in the last video. You'd have to listen to it. Is work shortages? Is this the start of the collapse of commercialization? So I'm going to read the question, and then I'll kind of paraphrase what I said in the last video, and then I'll try to answer this question if you don't mind. So I agree we need to value and prioritize our time in this space to become the powerful creators we are certainly capable of. My question, but should we consider the ethics and possible hidden agendas of the constructors of the machines that are to help us enjoy more leisure? Are there devastating booby traps in the mechanics which may eventually serve to further enslave us? And then it kind of goes along the lines of the next question, but like I said, I'm going to try to answer it this. So to paraphrase what I said in the last video, I was talking about the newer generation that is coming into the workforce now has different priorities than perhaps my generation and before my generation, which was, and my generation is kind of the transition point. I'm a Gen Xer, but and perhaps maybe even the baby boomers were a transitional too with the hippie movement, but it's been coming for some time. But it seems like this generation is much more about leisure and having their own time than material possessions per se. I'm not saying they're not materialistic. I'm not saying that this new generation's got it 100% right, but I found in my own personal life and with work that they don't care about the same things that my generation and earlier generations believe. I love to work. There's been times in my life where I've had to work multiple jobs. I didn't mind doing it. I don't like it, but you have to do what you have to do. This generation has got a totally different mindset. And I've talked to people who are newer on my job about, don't you need to work? Don't you need, money for this? No, I'm good. And I still, to this day, don't know how they make ends meet other than they're living a lot simpler than, because you can't desire material possessions over and over again and not work. I mean, that just doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? But they desire more of a leisure time than they do the actual material possessions. I even noticed this with my daughter. The times that I've asked her if she wanted to just get her out of the house, want to go to the mall, I'll buy you something, whatever. No, I'm fine. She'd rather just kind of stay at home and have her own time. Now, it goes along the lines of what I just said about freedom and justice. One of Maitreya's biggest priorities is the need for all of us to experience what true leisure as an art form. Now, leisure isn't just sitting on your bum watching TV. Leisure, from the master's point of view, is having your needs met enough, which is the justice part of it, to allow yourself true freedom, to experience life for yourself. Perhaps be able to travel. Another one of Maitreya's priorities is the free interchanges of people, to have the time to be able to travel to Europe and see all that Europe has to offer. I know for myself, I'm going on a wine tour. I'll be drinking the wines of Europe. I love wine. But anyway, but you see what I'm saying? But yours might be looking at the fountains of Rome or the sights or experiencing the food or whatever, whatever it happens to be. That is true leisure from the master's point of view, not having to worry about, a job. And they don't seem, in this generation that's coming up, doesn't have the same fear about not having a job or not having enough money as the previous generations did. So again, each generation has within it the experience, the wherewithal, the ability based on their reincarnational experiences to face the new time and meet the challenges of the time. And with automation, to answer your question, right? Automation is coming whether we want it or not. Okay, now this, like kind of what you're saying, I think is a legitimate question. And I would agree with you if the coming time is all going to be about commercialization, more of the same of what we've had in the past, right? Well, hopefully, and I know that there's hope in the fact that we can change our ways where it's not about commercialization. It's about, and it might sound kind of utopian right now, but in the future, in the not so distant future, it might seem more like a reality, like it could happen, I guess, that automation, robots, those kind of things would be more for the benefit of humanity than a corporation making a profit off of it. That's the scary part right now, because it could go either way. If it goes toward the commercialization like what you're talking about, then it's not going to be in the enslavement of humanity. It's going to be massive unemployment and all the problems thereof caused by that, right? Which will bring about more political and economic instability, more violence, more terrorism, more distrust if it goes that route, right? If it goes the route of the principle of sharing, bringing about justice, true freedom of all, then none of that will matter, right? But the choice is humanity's. Thankfully we have help. Thankfully we will see from these masters how to live. We'll hear from someone who, and you'll see this when you recognize him on TV, is totally uncorruptible, who has no personal agenda. His Maitreya being on TV is to teach us. It's not for his own popularity, obviously, because he's not claiming to be Maitreya. He's only presenting himself presenting his teachings in a preliminary way without us knowing who he is, because it's more important to know that information and to experience it for ourselves and the truth of what he's saying than to believe that he's a Messiah figure. You see what I'm saying? So that should tell you right there that he doesn't have an agenda in that way. But, have faith in each and every one of us. I know it's hard to believe. And it goes along the lines of the next question about the media and this, that kind of thing. And I'll read that in a second. But in regards to what you said, it's legitimate based on what we have experienced. I distrust the government too. You know what I'm saying? I distrust corporations. I don't trust that they necessarily have my best interests at heart, because they haven't, right? But have faith in humanity. Maitreya says, within the hearts of each and every one of us is the longing, the desire for peace and justice and unity. So even in the hearts of the most corrupted members of humanity that are all about profit is that truth. This information, and going back to what about the stock market crash, will disrupt a lot of people's lives like that in a good way. You know what I mean? We'll wake them up to the fact that we are one. They'll wake them up to the fact that they can't keep trying to make a profit over the environment, for instance, right? But, that is, I guess, the way. So to answer your question, based on the news articles talking about automation, about robots, about that kind of stuff, then yeah, I would be very distrusting of that. Once Maitreya comes out, and like I said, this artificial intelligence and automation, all that stuff is coming whether we want it or not. It's just going to be a matter of which path does humanity itself take. Does it more of commercialization? Then we got big problems. If it's about the benefit of humanity, then shoot, it will benefit humanity. And this generation is perfect because they don't have the desire to work the same way that we all do. It might seem totally foreign. It might seem like, oh my God, the world's going to go to hell, because these kids don't want to work. And right now it does kind of seem like that. And it's disrupting things. Do you know what I mean? Because they have a whole different attitude toward things. But yeah, have faith just a little bit if you can in your fellow brothers and sisters. We're going to get it. It's going to be fine. Maitreya says, all will be well. All manner of things will be well. So you might not believe what I believe Maitreya to be, the one obeyed by all the world's religions, the world teacher, and that's fine. But it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. That's a better way of saying it. So, anyway, but I thank you for that. And, you did bring up a good point. And then it kind of leads me to the next question, because it's kind of similar, but on a different way. Okay, it's coming from Yam Antaka. If I mispronounce that, please forgive me. I'm not the best at pronouncing names. All right, so it says, pardon me, sir. We live in a world where governments and their mockingbird media are conducting psychological operations and biological warfare against our people. Everything good is being systematically stripped away from the people. The media lies about so much. The media, including social media, and even individuals, censor anyone speaking the truth because the truth is dangerous to their lives. In such a world, why would they ever let a man who is genuinely good on television to tell us the truth? Why would they ever allow a man who seeks to empower individuals to become their whole true self on the television in this world? That doesn't seem congruent with reality. This, just like the previous question, is a legitimate question based on the world today, for sure, right? Now, first of all, I say Maitreya is on TV, right, which he is, and he has been, and he's conducted interviews on TV, but he also might be streaming live on YouTube channels. I don't know. Don't go looking for him. You'll see him when you see him, and you'll recognize him when you recognize him. And when you do, don't bring it up. Just allow other people to see it. But same thing goes for this, okay? I understand where you're coming from, and I understand your cynicism, for lack of a better word, of the world today, right? It is corruptible, The masters themselves, one of the masters said, commercialization is like a monster that has its hand on the throat of humanity, squeezing out any generous thought or gesture, right? Squeezing out the life force of humanity. And it's true. We have the ability to solve the problems of today rather easily, but because of commercialization, we're not doing anything about it, really. And those who are in control of the money want to keep it that way, right? Because it suits their needs, right? And I understand. Same thing with the media, right? The media is a structure just like the political structure and the economic structure. It's based on the past. But the media, be that as it may, is our representatives. It's the way that we communicate with one another. So that's the best way that he can do it. Now, this might be one of the reasons why Maitreya has not claimed to be Maitreya. I've said this before. I've never recognized Maitreya on TV. I've seen him in my own life. He even told me that I would see him real soon on television and we'd change the world together. He wasn't talking about me. He was talking about all of us. And soon, from Maitreya's point of view, is like anywhere up to 25 years. So I would jokingly say, if he wants to borrow money from you, says, I'll pay you back real soon, don't expect that money to come back next week. But I'm kidding. But where was I? I just lost my train of thought. But him being on. So I know what I was going to say. I have a very dear friend who knows this information, was putting out this information at an expo or something like that. And a woman came up to her booth and started up a conversation and said to her that she had seen a man on TV that she knew to be Maitreya. He wasn't claiming to be Maitreya. He wasn't even talking about any of this stuff. He was talking about politics. But she knew that it was him. I know of two people who have met somebody who have claimed to have recognized him on TV, and that's it. But the reason why more people aren't coming up is because it's still kind of in the preliminary stages of all this for this. So that probably goes along the lines of of what you're talking about, the reason why he's not doing it. One is probably because humanity is not quite ready, right? He wants to wake us up gently, but yet continuously. He has the corrupted media like you're talking about that he has to contend with. Doesn't want to ruffle their feathers too much and give him a chance to speak, right? And then also the representatives who are asking him questions, who are representing the consciousness of all of us, aren't thinking to ask him questions that bring about the fact that he is Maitreya. Does that make sense? So what you're saying, I think, is true to some degree, but at the same time, Maitreya is very adept at being able to speak to people without them really knowing who he is, And so like I said, that might be the reason why, is because the media is corrupt, like they're saying, and they would, if they found out that it was him, they would, pull him off that interview. We're never going to interview him again. So he's, but yet still at the same time, he's waking us up to the fact that we have these problems. And then eventually it will get just like the governments of the world. And then, like I said, this might sound utopian, but we'll wait and see if this is true. He will inspire humanity enough so much that even the corrupt media that would want to silence him won't have the ability to do so, because the people power will be so strong. And that's when, and it will lead me back to the first comment about the Day of Declaration that my friend from the Middle East was talking about. Humanity will demand from our media him allowed a chance to speak to all of us at one time. And that's when the Day of Declaration is going to happen. That's when he's going to speak to humanity, and we will all hear his call to humanity inwardly in our own head, in our own language. We'll be able to see why sharing is so important, why it is true to who we really are from Maitreya's perspective. He'll show us a vision of this. He'll show us what will happen if we don't, from his perspective, because he sees both futures going on at the same time. We will see it just as Maitreya sees it. Benjamin Creme's master said it will be as if he embraces all of humanity. We will feel his love even physically. There'll be millions of spontaneous cures, right? So those three reasons and those three ways are the reasons that we will all recognize Maitreya at the same time as being the one awaited by all the world's religions. So, but the media will be forced to do this because the people power will be too strong. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question. And just like I said a few minutes ago, I want to leave us with this, what Maitreya said: you'll see me on TV real soon, and we're going to change the world together. So you have a great day, and I look forward to more questions and more videos in the coming time. You take care. Help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.